The growing calls across the nation to defund the police.
To end policing as we know it.
Off the charts violence in New York City. 11 people shot in just 8 hours on Sunday.
This is about the police officers who every single day put on that uniform and they run towards danger when we run away from it.
Guns up. Giddy up, and there's Loud Eric coming in hot on Night Shift, baby. This is what it's all about. Comes down to this Tuesday nights, 8 p.m. This is where you want to be. If you want to be on the #1 show where law enforcement meets culture. And we are joined tonight by former cop turned stand-up comic / daily podcast host extraordinaire. We think we've got it hard with 4 shows a week at our own pace that we're in charge of. Is beholden to the podcast man above, daily grinding it out. What's up, Todd?
Hey guys, thanks for having me, man. This is great. The production value at the beginning just makes me it makes me feel bad about myself. What I got going on over here. That's top level.
Who else said that? Who else said that to us? It was the dude from A&E. What was his name? Mike,
Sean Larkin.
Sean Larkin. He said the same thing.
Yeah. I mean,
same words.
It's like top quality there. You guys are pros. You're pros.
Wow, to hear that from you. You've been in the podcasting world way longer than we have and seen good success there, and we're honored that you not only had us on your show before, but you're here tonight, man. It's going to be a good time. We have burned the ships, guys. We started doing live streaming on my Facebook and YouTube channel, and then we created the Failure to Stop YouTube channel specific so that people, a lot of people follow my content, but they're not really interested per se in the feed being cluttered with a podcast. They come there for specific reasons, and we wanted to really have an audience of people that are committed to the show and the content that we're putting out. So we created the Failure to Stop YouTube channel, and doggone it, man. We've grown to close to 2,000 subscribers our first month there, and we're growing. And now we're only doing the live shows Fridays at 8 and Fridays at 11 in the morning, only on Failure to Stop. So the ships have been burned. There's no turning back, Todd.
There's no turning back. But you know what? I get it. Isn't it funny how on your social media, like your followers are like, we like this. You put up any of that, we're shutting it down. We're looking away. We're looking the other direction.
Yeah, you ain't kidding, man. Speaking of times, the greatest thing that the government has ever done has begun. Today, in the Senate, unanimously voted to pass permanent daylight savings time. So no time change anymore. Countrywide. It's about time.
I can go back to normal. Indiana never changed before. That was new to us.
Doesn't either. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it is crazy to me.
Who made that decision? Because I'm going to re-vote for that person.
Marco Rubio put it up, but it was unanimous. It was across all. This is the shit that politicians need to start doing. Make some stop fucking around in other countries and start changing my time to make it more convenient for me. Start doing shit that matters to me right here, right
make
now.
this about us, baby.
Unanimous. What else can they agree? What if Congress just started there and said, you know what, guys, let's just pause. What is it that we all agree on? And then start there and do some of that shit for a while.
Yeah.
I loved it because when we were like only one of 2 states of the union that didn't change, I always thought it made us a little safer. Like I had a buddy that had a theory. He was like, nobody ever knows what fucking time it is in Indiana. So I always felt like it protected us against terrorist attack a little bit because nobody could synchronize their watches.
The squad that's coming in.
It makes so much sense.
Ready, boys, synchronize watches. Wait.
All right, guys, today we're going to rob this bank. We're going to do it at 3:05 p.m. Is that Eastern time? Is that Indiana time? What's the difference? I don't know.
Where's
Is
the
that
bank? It's
Central
close
time?
to the time change line. I don't know. I think we might cross time zones to get there. Shit. Abort.
Yeah.
Who knows what's going on? So, Todd, obviously we're gonna talk about we're gonna talk murder tonight for a little bit. But what's it like to go from tell us about your life right now, comedy wise and this day in crime wise. What's your life like now compared to what it was when you were copping?
Man, when I was copping, I had it made. Like I only, I love my street men and women, women and men of uniform. But I was a detective my whole career, all of but 15 months. Like I was a detective of one kind or another. So I had so much autonomy, like when I was a shirt and tie detective, a little different because, you're a little bit reactive. Here, you got a caseload this high, always leaning over your head. But I moved to covert investigations for a bulk of my career. No victims there. So it was all proactive, It was all drug stuff, wiretap, stuff like that. So we were deciding what we were going to work on and who we were going to work on. And therefore, we kind of wrote our own schedules. Now, you take me out of that when I retire, when my friend Pat McAfee decided he was going to leave the NFL, asked me if I wanted to leave police work. I was like, yeah. I almost got shot in an apartment complex a year ago, and I'm trying to get on Comedy Central. Those two things.
Nothing like almost getting shot to make you rethink some careers.
Right. So I did. I left, and then I go into this world, because we worked for Barstool Sports then, where I always podcasted before because I'd been a comedian for like 7 years up to that point already. But I was podcasting like where 20 people were listening to me, every episode. And then I get thrust into Barstool Sports right away, just a million eyes on us, and 2 million ears. And it was different. I was like, I learned a lot there. For one, I worked for a genius and he worked for a genius. So I got to learn a lot about the game, but still this was sports entertainment, but it was comedy, and we kind of decided what we were doing, right? Yeah. And when I left there, I full-time comedy. I'm like, all right, I'm finally taking the plunge. My buddy Pat was like, you know what? I want you to go for it. If it doesn't work out, you need to come back anytime. So I go with the full head of steam. I'm hitting, I was booked from that January through September. And I was like, this is the most money I ever made in my life. I'm going to be rich after this year. And I still had a big following from his show. And then 2 months later, COVID, boom, gone.
Yeah.
It was like, I had just bought a Lamborghini. I was cruising on the Autobahn and just like, you know what? This is as good as life gets. And then all of a sudden, there was a tree that someone planted in the middle of the Autobahn, and my Lamborghini just smashed into it.
That's how I feel right now with all the inflation. Like I felt like my life's really together. I'm doing good. I've got these podcasts. I'm working with Mike the Cop. I'm making more money than I've ever made. And then $10 a gallon at the gas pump.
Right?
It's all gone.
I work from home, so you know what? Fuck it. I can ride it out. That's what I say.
You're right. Yeah. I tried my, go ahead.
I was just saying, and now I go from that. I ride COVID out. I got into documentaries a little bit, which if we talk about a case, I got something with that. But then I'm like, I'm going to have to take a job. Like my savings account's about gone. I wrote out everything I'd put back from working for big time people. And then I get a call from my buddies at Resonate Recordings in Louisville who do big time true crime podcasts. And they're like, hey, we're going to put this daily show together. I want you to be the host of it. And I was like, I could do that. I used to work sports radio for 3 years. I know what it's like to work a morning show. Yeah, not the same. Like I get up every day at 6 o'clock in the morning and I have to start crunching news, right? Because the first part of the show is me picking kind of the bigger crime stories of the day and running you through them. And then I hand it over to my partner, who's an investigative journalist. She goes in depth on a historical crime that happened on that day. And then I follow it with analysis. So not only do I have homework stuff that I have to pre-record to do, every day I got that 6-7 hour grind of putting the topical part of the show together.
And
Listen,
and it's the shorter form, right?
Yeah, and you know what? These things are last under 20 minutes.
That's nuts. That's not easy to do. People think, 20 minutes, that's no problem. Like, no, when you're trying to condense this shit into 20 minutes and do a good job, that is not easy.
Yeah, because you got to pick kind of cream of the crop stories. You got to pick, what's important. And then plus they want me to incorporate a little bit of humor. So I got to kind of, pick my shots when I can be funny, when I can't. And so it takes me a long time to put it together. Before, when I had that kind of schedule, it was just me and my buddies. And, we started drinking at like 8 in the morning. So.
Well, I didn't have 7 hours to prepare for this news story, but I did have 10 minutes. And since you are basically a journalist, why don't you go ahead and rate me on how I do in presenting this to you in 5 minutes? Because I have breaking news. Little Miss Nobody.
This story sucks already.
As of an hour ago, now has a name. Are you familiar with Little Miss Nobody?
I am. Yeah, I covered that story a couple days ago. You're a little late, so I'm going to take you down.
Never mind.
No.
Well, it says as of 1 hour ago, March
crime.
15th. All right. Well, I guess the crowd will never know.
Go back 2 days ago to this day in crime.
Yesterday in crime. Well, I thought that.
Now I want to know. Shit.
Tell the story.
Well, I mean, so this girl went missing 61 years ago, and her body was found in Arizona. She was burned up real bad. Only thing they could tell is that she had a blue buttoned blouse and shorts on. She had small feet, but she had adult flip-flops that had been cut down to her size. She had painted fingernails. Other than that, they didn't have a race or anything else. But through technology and forensics and all the things, DNA analysis, they have now concluded that they have definitely identified her as Sharon Lee Gallegos, who was abducted from her grandmother's home in Alamogordo, New Mexico, July 21st, 1960. So they will never have to call her Little Miss Nobody again. Her name is Sherry Lee Gallegos.
And I got to give you props. I give you a little bit of help, but you're right. Today, the breaking news was the actual name. They announced that they were going to release it at that community college today. And that you know what? Isn't it incredible as like former cops that we live in this time where you can go back 60 some years on a case and rewrite that family's history as far as what they knew about that loved one they lost?
Yeah, it's incredible.
It's incredible. It's like when my parents, they saw somebody step on the moon for the first time. That's what I think every time I see a story like that.
Did they?
Or did they?
And then they looked down and saw that the earth was flat.
What if we don't really have new DNA and they're just making up shit? They're just like picking names and putting together a backstory.
After she disappeared, exactly who she was. Deep government operations. Well, guys, those of you that are watching, thank you for being in the chat. We appreciate you participating in the live show. You guys are the real MVPs. Thank you for everybody that is telling people about the show, leaving reviews, rating it wherever you're listening. We really, really appreciate it. Follow us on Instagram at Failure to Stop, Facebook Failure to Stop, YouTube if you look it up, because YouTube, the way they do it, you don't choose a username until you're like big and famous. So we're just a bunch of letters. So just look up Failure to Stop and you'll find us there. And we want to thank, before we dive into these stories that Todd's bringing to the table tonight, we want to thank our sponsor, Ghostbed. And I'll tell you one thing right now. First of all, Todd, feel free to jump in and color commentate any part of the ad reads you want. That's part of our favorite part of the show, is making good ad reads. But I was out of town this last weekend. I had to sleep first at a hotel bed, and then I was at an Airbnb for the next 2 nights. Beds were not uncomfortable, but they were not my ghost bed. And I really came to appreciate when I crawled in to bed finally on Sunday night at home, my ghost bed. I slept so good it was scary. You know what I'm saying?
Sleep so good, it's scary. Hey, Todd, listen, we have a really interactive ad read here. So you're just gonna have to feel this out. You're gonna have to feel the rhythm. If you're getting into the rhythm and you know when you can chime in on this, it's pretty obvious. Go ahead and chime in, do the best you can do. If not, just sit there and all of our fans will just
He'll rate you on your ad read now,
but,
just like you got to rate him on his breaking news.
You know who I think should rate mattresses, and like there's a certain demographic that I think should be solely responsible for rating how good a mattress is or a chair, and that's kidnapping victims. Like if you were, like we should recruit people that had been kidnapping victims for a long time, because no one has a more intimate experience with being stuck on a mattress or a chair for long periods of time than a kidnapping victim.
That's true. Well, that's what we need to do. We need to kidnap someone and force them onto a ghost bed for a month, and then let them review it.
Yeah, I think
Be
so.
like, you know what? It really was the silver lining to my kidnapping was the ghost bed, because I really wasn't uncomfortable, to be honest with you.
It's like the Stockholm syndrome, but she's got like stock bed syndrome. She's like, man, I really like this bed and I don't want to leave now.
You know, I miss my family, but you know what? I slept great.
I felt like I actually recuperated from the years of sleep that I was losing. I'm actually better for this.
Well,
I actually figured out a way out of the room because I was sleeping so good. My brain was working, and I really was able to think about a creative way out of the situation. You know,
My sleep apnea is gone. I don't know.
like the whole Saw. It's like a new Saw movie where they have to get off of the bed, and then they just sit there and they're like, "Nah, fuck it. Do whatever you're gonna do. I'm not leaving this thing. This thing is legit." But we love Ghostbed. They've been a loyal sponsor for the last 5 years for Drinking Bros. We're part of the Drinking Bros Network. Our favorite part about Ghostbed is that they're made in the good old, come on, boys, USA.
USA.
Boy, you do that about as good as Mike. Every mattress has a 20-year warranty. Some even have 25. You can try it out for 101 nights. If you don't like it, you can easily send them back. No hard feelings, but you won't. One of our favorite parts about Ghostbed is that each mattress has that cooling technology in it. So if you get hot at night, like we do here, does it get hot in Indiana at night? Probably not.
It gets hot in my bedroom. I don't know why. Everywhere I've ever lived, the room I picked to be my master bedroom, hottest room of the house, and I hate it.
This has that cooling technology, so you can stay hard while staying cool, Todd. Ghostbed offers bundles so that you can get everything you need. You don't even have to really think about it. Just choose from their 4 mattresses and pick your bundle. Whether you just need a mattress and a frame or you want it all, I want it all.
no, I want it all.
I want
it
it
all.
all.
No,
And
I want it all.
it now. Like their cooling pillow and sheets, you can get the best bang for your bucks. Right now, Ghostbed is offering 40% off Ghostbed bundles, where you get a mattress and adjustable base, or 30% off everything if you use that promo code Drinkin' Bros. That's DRINKIN Bros at ghostbed.com/Drinkin' Bros. Mattress. You can get a mattress for like $35 a month, 0 down, 0% financing. That's if you got firefighter credit. Go check it out. Ghostbed.com/Drinkin' Bros. Sleep so good it's scary.
Male supplements sold separately.
Kidnapping.
You know,
Kidnapping not included.
that's one thing I love about getting the age that I am right now. Like my feed is nothing but male supplements and boner pills. Like that's all it is.
We lost our boner pill one.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, because we called it boner pills.
Yeah, they didn't like that.
I told
They
a
wanted
Lori
more
Lightfoot.
professional approach.
We told a Lori Lightfoot story, and it was a really bad story, as most Lori Lightfoot stories are. And then I said, "Damn, Lori Lightfoot makes us all soft." But you know what gets us hard? And then I said, "The ad read." They didn't.
I mean, do they want to sell pills or not? Let's go.
Right?
Yeah, you know what
I
I'm
guess
saying?
not.
Jeez. Yeah.
So-
So we're on the hunt. We're on the hunt for a new. I'm going through somebody right now. I'm not going to say who they are because they're going to have to pay to be on the show. But I'm hoping that the relationship works out for me personally.
You're taking boner pills right now?
No, I don't take boner pills. Just the ones from the gas station, but they're not boner pills, right?
You never take boner pills? Listen, I was taking boner pills when I was young because a friend of mine.
Because you just wanted to last 4 hours.
Well, yes, because if you like, do you want to just hit a double, or do you want to be able to hit a grand slam?
I just want to hit consistent singles. That's how you get in the Hall of Fame.
I'm like Pete Rose. I'm just grinding it out.
I had a friend who was a professional athlete, and he was telling me that this is real locker room talk. Like when you're a rookie and you enter the league, some of the vets grab you right away and like, hey man, you going out tonight? Yeah, here, take some of this. And like, well, I don't need that. I'm 24. And he's like, listen, when you were in the league, every time you have sex with someone, it's their best story. You've got to show up. Like, and if you're going to be drinking and stuff. So they have all this pressure, which I never thought about before. You know what I mean? Like, nobody cares when they have sex with me. My fiance hates it. Like, you know, but you know, if you play in the NFL, that person's going to tell everybody they know about how you performed that night.
I don't think I'd be interested in lasting 4 hours, to be honest with you.
They would call me Charlie Hustle, but for a different reason.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. Have you guys, I don't know what kind of content you usually throw around on here, but have you guys had a threesome?
With Mike and myself?
Us two?
Not a show threesome.
like where we high-five each other in the middle? I don't understand.
What are they? Do an Eiffel Tower? No.
Not the devil's threesome, the other way. You and two fine ladies.
Yeah, absolutely not.
You know what? Don't. It's so much work. So much work. I hated every minute of it. I was like, this is not what I thought it would be.
It's a lot of pressure.
It's a lot of the pressure on me. Yeah.
I'm like a real selfless lover, so I would just be constantly asking, "Are you doing okay? Are you doing all right? Is this okay? Are you okay? Are you comfortable?
You know what? I'm just going to leave you two alone. I'm going to go watch some TV.
Yeah.
and call my doctor because we're at the 4.5 hour mark.
There's some breaking news that just came out 3 days ago. I got to go catch up on it.
I gotta work on my podcast, but all right. So, what stories have you brought to the table here, Todd? I'm down to hear some murder stories.
Well, I won't go too crazy in depth on them, but you know, I'm from Indiana. I live in Indianapolis, and we had 2 serial killers rip through central Indiana at the same time, targeting the same people, and it was something that I just. You know, this happened basically between 1980 and 1996. So I became a cop. I went to the academy in 95. So I remember the second one getting taken down because it was a big news splash. But the first guy happened before me. So all I knew really of these two were whenever I would go have like coffee with the older detectives and I would hear some of the war stories, you know, because those were big cases. So we had Larry Eiler, who was a gay man who was not closeted, which was a bit unusual for the time, and he would only kill gay men. And then,
interesting.
Wait, so he was gay?
Yes, he was gay, and he targeted and killed gay men. So a lot of hitchhikers, a lot of Then in the Indianapolis area, we had a thriving downtown Indianapolis gay scene because we're a huge conference hub. Right. So men that, most gay men were closeted then because if people found out at your work or your family, it just negatively affected your life. So we had 16 gay nightclubs at one point because there was so much anonymity in Indianapolis. You would come in for these conferences, and if you were a closeted gay man from Arizona, nobody knew you here in Indianapolis. You could go hang out at the gay bars, and if somebody saw you, big deal. Nobody knows who I am.
Oyster.
Right. So there was so much anonymity going on. Our scene thrived, but then next thing you know, there was this we got a lot of gay guys missing from the club, and it alarmed their community, and so much so that finally the state police formed a task force with the Indianapolis Police Department and a bunch of other agencies because there were so many missing men, and they were finding bodies every now and then, and they were like brutal stabbings, just brutal slayings, like just rage killings almost. So when they formed this task force, they get a name at some point, and they get a tip. The guy says, you need to look at Larry Eiler. He lives in Terre Haute, Indiana. That's where Indiana State is, home of Larry Bird, right? Mm. So, and Larry Bird, funny enough, was at college when this was going down there.
Okay.
Yeah. So So that Larry Eiler's name comes up, and this task force. I still had 2 friends to this day, older guys who were on that task force, and they were charged with doing nothing but following Larry Eiler around. So everywhere he went, he worked at this liquor store. They would go to the liquor store and just sit there for an entire shift until he left, and they would follow him. But he was a guy who, when he got in his pickup truck, would drive like 95, 100 mile an hour everywhere he went. Wow. So he was so hard to follow. So they lost him several times, over and over and over. Well, he's just making his way between Terre Haute, Indianapolis, and Chicago, just slaying dudes. Now, the story of how he came to be,
like, not in a good way either. Like,
right.
Dude.
Yeah. Not like how we slay, right?
Yeah.
Like in serial killer slaying.
Right.
So
he was laying pipes
right
to their heads.
Exactly. So he gets kind of tipped off that they're following him at some point. Right. He stops. He picks up a guy downtown at Indianapolis at a club, and they stop and they walk off. He's like, "Hey, let's go do this." They had a little ritual where he would say, "I'll give you $100 if I can tie you up and, do some sexual stuff to you, and maybe even take a couple pictures." And guys
throwing a tank of gas, and I'm in.
Right, guys would do it. So then he would kill them. Well, he did that to this guy. They'd leave the truck. They go walking into the woods, and a trooper sees the car parked, and it's abandoned, but he can tell. He feels the hood. It's warm. People are still around here. So he starts yelling out, "Hey, you need help? Are you here?" So he gets interrupted, and they come sauntering back to the car, and then the trooper grabs his license. Well, there was a bolo that had been put out by the task force that said, "If you stop Larry Eiler, we want you to just notate everything that you see, vehicle-wise. If he's with somebody, note it, and just keep your eyes peeled." Right? He's a suspect in these murders.
This guy that both of them. So the victim is still alive at this point.
Yeah. He got interrupted pre-kill by the trooper yelling out. So,
do you think the guy doesn't know that he's going to die yet? They're just doing the kinky stuff at that point.
Right. At this point, he's just kind of being like a prostitute, right?
Right.
And which a lot of the victims were. They call them street hustlers back then, but same principle. So this trooper, all he remembers, and he's young. I mean, he's like fresh out of probation, and he's like, "Oh, I've got a big fish here. I remember seeing him. This is a serial killer, and I'm going to shake down this car." So he took the bolo as in grab this guy, bring him back to the post, right? Fuck the Fourth Amendment, any of this stuff, He just goes through the car, handcuffs him up.
Fruit of the poisonous tree. I've never heard of that.
Yes. And he finds the magic duffel bag that they always talked about that he carried around, his little murder kit. Everything's in there. The rope, the knife. The knife even has blood stains on it. Grabs it all up, takes him to the post. And we had a guy in the legal section then. He actually taught our legal classes when I was in the academy. And he thought himself a legend. Well, he made the decision. I found some obscure case law that says we can hold somebody for over 24 hours without arresting them or bringing charges. So let's do that. And they kept him there for over 24 hours, inventoried his car, found all this great evidence while authorities in Illinois are also working on him. And then the task force guys get notified, and they show up, and they're like, "What are you doing? You can't hold a guy for this long." And he's like, "No, I'm an attorney, and you're not." "Yes, Mr. Zell, you are an attorney, but you're also a trooper. You're a trooper attorney who doesn't know your ass from a legal hole in the ground." So they blow it. They blow it all. They had enough evidence then to put him away in more than one murder from what was taken in his vehicle. But Illinois authorities couldn't get it in because fruit of the poisonous tree. So now he's freed to kill, which is the book that's written about him. That's what it's called. So he moves to Chicago. He's like, you know what? He files a lawsuit.
Too much heat over here.
Yeah. Files a lawsuit. Says, screw Indiana. I'm going to Illinois. And when he's there, he ends up getting caught putting severed body parts into a dumpster in his own in an adjacent apartment complex.
Hate it when that happens.
Right. So he gets caught for the murder of Danny Bridges. who was a young street hustler. I think he was 17 then. And that puts him in prison, and there's a snowball effect afterward. Now, the reason, and this is part of what I'm looking into this documentary I referred to. We know all that happened, right? So I get to digging into it because I'm like, it's weird that we had these two, Herb Baumeister was a closeted gay man, but also a gay man who was targeting gay victims from the same clubs. They would frequent the same clubs. So there's a 4-year overlap in murders that they're associated with. So for 4 years, 2 gay guys were hunting in downtown Indianapolis for other gay men, taking them home and killing them, or taking them to a woods and killing them. So I started digging into the
What's wrong
story.
with that? I thought this was America.
Right? Yeah. So I'm dying to know if these two are connected. So when I really dig into the story, I end up finding out that Larry Eiler wrote a deathbed confession in 1994. He died while he was in prison from complications of AIDS. So
That's weird.
Right?
Shocker.
So his attorney,
Did
Kathleen,
Michael Jackson sing a song about him or anything? Or
no, they didn't. They didn't hold a telethon. Nothing.
Dang it.
Just died lonely in prison of AIDS. And his attorney, Kathleen Zellner, who's the attorney for making a murderer.
Yeah, I knew that name sounded familiar.
Yeah, she says, "Listen, I'm not going to take all this knowledge to my grave. You're going to write out a confession before you die and give me permission to release this to police after you're gone." So he does. He writes a huge, I got it. It's a stack like this. And in that confession, he lays out everything. And he says, that he was cultivated to be a killer by this college professor at Indiana State, a professor of library sciences of all things, right? Just a real weird looking, trolley looking guy. And he says that a guy he was dating who was living with the professor introduces him to the professor. Then he moves in. The 3 of them are there, and they kind of end up forming like a little serial killer network.
Okay.
So now the professor got charged in the Stephen Egan murder eventually because Larry's testimony, and he gets acquitted. But he gets sued twice after that for other murders, like wrongful death suits, and settles out of court. So there's a stain on this guy.
Was the professor, so he grooms Larry and this other dude, but is the professor actually killing people, or is he living vicariously through instigating and training them to do it?
Both. So
Okay.
he cultivated them, trained them on what to do, and actually like Larry was a guy who would get really stressed out, and he was one of those killers like, I have to go create violence, right? I can't deal with this stress. And he was in love with a guy, and that guy was married, whenever they would have a falling out, he just couldn't handle it, and the professor after a while started to capitalize on it. Now this is all according to his deathbed confession. So the professor would say, well, have you ever thought about killing somebody? So watch this movie Caligula with me, which is about this demented Roman Empire who would have these sex death orgies. And he would say, we can create a scene like this, and I guarantee it'll make you feel better. Well, finally, according to Larry,
Oh my gosh.
according to Larry, he talks him into doing one, which was the Stephen Egan murder in Vermilion County, Indiana. And listen, that was horrific. Like he was gutted like a deer, field dressed afterward. And that became a staple in just a few of Larry's 21 murders that he confessed to. So you have 17 murders that he committed where he says, I did those alone. Now, the professor knew about it. He would make me bring souvenirs. He would give me money for bringing him bloody shirts and whatnot. But because he would keep a trophy room or whatever. And he said, but there's 4 murders that he did with me. And whenever he did it, he would orchestrate this scene, just like the movie Caligula. And he would make me do these crazy things I didn't like afterward to the bodies.
Like what? So, I guess you got standards, you got morals, I guess.
Yeah. So when you look at him, and first, because I'm like, I got to discern whether this is just some guy's bullshit written thing, right? Well, when you look through all the case evidence, there were 4 murders out of the 21 where basically the victims were field dressed like deer, mutilated afterward. And there was torture, signs of torture for a long time before. Now, in Larry's kills, the 17 he says I did by myself, it was just he'd have sex with them, and then he would go into a rage, and he would just stab them like 40 sometimes, and then just dump the body. There was no trying to hide anything, none of this stuff. So there are 4, and it supports what he's saying, in my opinion, because there's 4 that stand out. And a 5th one, which was Danny Bridges, where the body got severed afterward. And Larry says, listen, I'm confessed to 21 of these things. That one, which you put me on death row for, which I don't care, I'm dying anyway, I didn't do that one. The professor did it at my apartment. And when I got home, he was dead, and it was my job to get rid of the body. Now, you think, okay, what's he have to lose by saying that, first of all? I always give, a certain amount of credence to deathbed confessions like that anyway, especially if he confessed to 21 others.
Yeah.
But he said, and then when you go back and look at the lead investigator in the Vermilion County case ended up discovering that the professor was at the apartment that day. And someone saw him, so he couldn't deny that he wasn't there. So he came up with an alibi that said, I drove home at this time because I wanted to pay my taxes first thing in the morning, which he did. Like at 8 a.m, like months
That's
early.
How crazy the mind power of the IRS is over people.
Right.
You'll kill a motherfucker, but you will pay your taxes on time.
I don't want to get in trouble for not paying my taxes. So he clearly was just trying to lay some groundwork for an alibi, right? Because he's paying him months early. He had never done that before. But he's like, I need to go somewhere where someone can say they saw me, and then there's written documentation I was here. Now, it's all kind of doesn't matter because he could drive that far. They only lived 2.5 hours from Chicago. But his timeline that he had created had him leaving way before. Now, they were able, this investigator was able to disprove that alibi and then charge him with the Stephen Egan murder. He couldn't get Illinois to charge him with Danny Bridges. But he had to come up with another witness that said, no, I saw him rolling out of that apartment at like 3:34 in the morning. And no one did anything with the information because they already had Larry, locked up on death row for that murder.
Yeah.
So I feel like he kind of skated on that one. And then in Vermilion County, the Stephen Egan murder, when he got charged, his whole thing there was he was caught, pretty dead to rights on a lot of stuff, but he created another alibi where he was in Florida at his parents' the day that Stephen Egan was killed. Now, this guy, this lead investigator, finds bank footage, still images from surveillance cameras of him in there cashing a check the day of the murder, and a receipt to a mechanic shop where he had had his car serviced earlier that day, disproving that he was in Florida. Now, his secretary had verified his alibi and said, no, I bought his ticket and I saw where he checked in on the flight, so he went to Florida. And then he ended up getting her to renege on that alibi. I was told to lie and I lied. None of this gets allowed in court, which is a whole nother issue.
Right.
There was some weird stuff going on with the prosecutor's office there. So nothing gets used. Nothing damning really gets allowed in that trial, and he gets acquitted. So
Acquitted. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now, when you look at all that, I was trying to be objective about this whole thing. I'm thinking, you know what? I think the professor got away with something.
How would he have got acquitted with all that other evidence that had piled up, like with his alibis not lining up or his locations not lining up? Like
the prosecutor said, I'm not using that information.
what the heck?
I know. So the lead investigator is losing his mind. Now, keep in mind, this was a brand new prosecutor. It was not the prosecutor that charged the case, but this is how messed up things were in Vermilion County. Boy, I'm giving away a lot of stuff. It's going to be in the documentary, but that's all right. So
I think you're going to get every single person in the chat. Based on the chat that I'm seeing, everybody's like, what the hell? They'll watch the documentary right along with us.
Right.
Dude, I'm all in.
So this lead investigator, he was the first responding officer to the Stephen Egan murder site, the very first known victim of Larry Eiler. And Larry Eiler, of course, claims that the professor was there because it was his first kill. He coached me. He made me mutilate the body, all these things. So when there's two different trials going on, one for Larry and then one for the professor. And Larry's testifying against the professor. Well, initially when he first came up with Larry Eiler as a suspect, it was because of what he saw happen to Danny Bridges in Illinois. When it hit the news, he was like, that sounds like my guy. He did Stephen Egan. So he's my suspect, and he started voicing that. And next thing you know, he gets a call he gets called into his sheriff's office, and the sheriff says, "Hey, prosecutor just called. You're off the case." He's like, "What do you mean I'm off the case?" Now, they only had like 7 officers.
Right.
Right. And he's like, "You pulled me off the case." He goes, "Yeah, but don't worry. I mean, you're not being replaced. It's just the case is done. Prosecutor's done with that case." He's like, "What do you mean? We have this boy was gutted like a deer and left in this old abandoned farmhouse. What about his parents? What about his family? All this stuff." And he's like, "I don't know, man. Not my call. Prosecutor just said we're done." Well, there's going to stuff that's going to come up that's surfaced about what was going on with that prosecutor. But that prosecutor gets beat at the next election. And the new prosecutor, gung-ho, good prosecutor, calls Perry, the lead investigator, and he says, "Hey, I want you to reopen that Larry Eiler case. I know you had a suspect you really believed in. That family deserves closure. Let's reopen this and get it going." He says, "All right, cool." So he goes to the sheriff's office, and he goes to the master case file. And when he pulls it out, it's completely empty. Someone had removed every swinging scratch piece of paper, every photo, every property receipt, everything from that case file. Empty.
Dude, and who gets like, where's the investigation for that?
Right? So he's like, "What do I do now? We're screwed. We're going to have to go back and redo everything. You know, it's been a long time since then. It's been years." Luckily, he tells this story to a reserve deputy who at the time, because they didn't have very many people in the department, he recruited a reserve deputy to help him keep things organized during his investigation initially. Well, that reserve deputy says, "Well, listen, I would have never said this before because I would be scared to get in trouble, but I made copies of everything. Like I have whenever you had me go print off."
Chances of that?
I know.
Why would he even do that?
I think probably he thought this is going to be a big famous case one day, maybe, and I'll have this private collection of everything. Well, it worked out. I mean, whenever he was asked to go print off photos, he would print off a duplicate set for himself. And
what a lot of work to establish a chain of custody of that, though, to allow it to be even introduced in evidence.
Yeah, a nightmare. And we're talking, things were a little looser then, but still. So they're able to put
the mustaches were thick and the rules were thin.
Well, this is how screwed up it was. He ends up putting the case together, right? And he gets Larry charged. He brings him down out of prison from Illinois, puts him in the Vermilion County Jail. He ends up getting now Larry's pleaded guilty. He's like, I'm gonna tell you everything. And he ends up finding out because of some of the details that it looks like maybe the professor set him up on some stuff, planted some stuff of his at the scene after the fact. Because he's like, "I know what happened to that, and I did not drop that." Like a key that he used to have at a place he used to work was found under Stephen Egan's body. Like not as part of a keychain, a single key that normally would be on one of his keychains was removed from the ring and placed underneath Stephen Egan's body when it was recovered. And he's like, "Listen, no way he's like, somebody put that there." He's like, "Yeah, my key. Yes, I murdered the guy, but I wasn't alone. The other guy, the professor, planted that freaking key. Now let me give you all the information I know about him." So now we get him charged. And when he comes down, this is how screwed up the place was. Now this jail, one of my favorite things to do is to go look at old jails, like from back in the day, like Mayberry jails. This jail, back half jail, front half, 2-story house. The sheriff lived there. So the sheriff's house butts up against the jail, right? And it's a small jail. It's 2 tiers. I think it could house maybe like 12 people. So he has 2 serial killers in this jail. It's big news. News out there all the time. Well, the professor ends up like having pizza parties. He has a lot of money, by the way, like a weird amount of money for a college professor. So he's buying copy machines for the jail, all these gifts, these expensive gifts, pizza parties whenever he wants, and he's allowed to leave whenever he wants. A deputy will take him out to run errands. On one particular occasion, he was allowed to go to his place of where he lived, his residence, where they still believed things could be concealed there, hidden. They were still exploring that. He was
parties, man.
Yeah.
That just cracks me up, dude.
So at one point,
I mean, I made pizza hot pockets for prisoners before, but this
Right.
is on another level. It's the whole. I'm not getting little even
Pizza for
$5
everybody.
hot and readies or anything.
yeah, pizza for everybody. Then the deputies would show up and they would eat. The inmates were all eating together, one big happy family. And at one point, he has a guy in a neighboring cell that he's kind of befriended there, and he is allowed to leave with this guy, and then hooks this guy up with a job. Now this guy's in there for at the time an felony drug dealing case, like a big charge, but he is allowed. The sheriff allows him to go work at an insurance company during the day, like he's on work release, and then just come back on his own recognizance to turn himself in to go to bed at night.
No wonder there's a documentary being made about this. This is definitely like making a murder like style debacle.
He's crazy, right? So at one point, the professor walks in, has an envelope with $5,000 cash on one of his return visits, and this is right after he's acquitted. He returns to the jail and he gives one of the deputies an envelope with $5,000, and he says that's his. He's going to use that for his legal fees. And he's like, okay. Well, next thing you know, that guy walks out the back door of the jail, leaves. That's the story. Now, the real story was he gave the deputy $5,000, and then that guy probably had the door open for him. It looks like go. There was a car waiting behind, gone to the winds. And my guy, Perry, he had the charge on the guy. He had to go track the guy down. The guy confessed. The guy told him. He said, yeah, the professor gave me $5,000, and he told me that there was something I was going to have to do for him. But he wouldn't give him the whole story. He said, but I hadn't got my instructions yet on what to do by the time you guys found me. I went and partied a little bit, and I didn't report in when I was supposed to. So there was some kind of plan to happen with, there was some witnesses out there, we know, things like that. So real shady circumstances. So then all this is going on, right? And there's the guy that introduced him to the professor, who in Larry's deathbed confession says he was killing with the professor. He was strangling, specifically said strangling gay men in Indianapolis between 1980 and 82. I know that for a fact. And that other guy, I'm not going to say his name because he's never been charged with anything, but he says, and he said that guy's still alive. So is the professor, by the way.
What?
So he says this other guy would keep news clippings of all his murders scrolled up like a little scroll. Well, they found the same type of scroll with news headlines in the professor's residence during the search warrant. And they were all known Larry Eiler victims. No, there were no others. So that added up. So that guy leaves, and he worked in education too. So he goes and gets a job in education, and then ends up giving a deposition that he was also at Larry's house the day that Danny Bridges was murdered in Chicago, but also left earlier in the day when the professor did. And then the trail stops on this guy. No one pursues him as a suspect in any of these disappearances or deaths. He just kind of gets left to be. Then Herb Baumeister pops up. After Larry Eiler goes to prison, the murder should have stopped, right? But they didn't.
Right.
Now gay men were being found strangled, not stabbed, not mutilated, just strangled all through central Indiana and along I-70 to Dayton, Ohio. And there's 13 bodies that they end up putting together, and they call it the I-70 strangler case. And it goes on from 1980, like I said, to about 1993, I think, and then no more bodies all of a sudden. So they're like, all right, our killer must have died or went to prison for something else. Well, Then they have a guy that shows up one day. More gay men go missing. There's posters everywhere at all the gay nightclubs. And so the gay community is like, no, they're not done. You're just not finding the bodies yet. But our friends are still missing, like all the time. Well, a guy shows up at this private investigator's office whose name was at the bottom of a lot of the gay men's flyers. The families were hiring him because they couldn't get police help. So he calls this private investigator. This guy calls him and says, hey, I think I know who's been strangling all my friends. And he said, I went home with this guy and he tried to strangle me. He lived in this big old mansion. And he first told me he was just landscaping there, but he had free run for the month at this place because the family was away. And he tried to strangle me, tried to kill me. I got away. And then I saw him like a month later walk in, and he was looking at the poster for Roger Allen Goodlett. And Roger Allen Goodlett was a good friend of mine, he says. And I could tell by the way he was staring. I'm like, he tried to kill me. Look at the way he's looking at Roger. That's the killer. And he follows him out to his car and gets his plate number. Gives it to Virgil Vandergrift, the retired sheriff's deputy detective who's now a PI. He's got friends in the department, so he calls and he says, this is what I got. Can you run this plate? And when they do, it comes back to Herbert Baumeister. Now they find this mansion called Fox Hollow Farm on the north side of Indianapolis, 18-acre horse farm, big-ass mansion of a house. And he's a suspect for a good little while. They still can't get enough information on him to effect an arrest, but they approach him. He won't talk. They approach his wife. They tell her, hey, we pretty much know that your husband, for one, he's gay, and he's killing and he's killing gay men.
I'm not gay. I'm just a murderer.
Right. So she's freaked
Oh
out.
my gay.
Yeah, right. She's freaked out, and but she says, I'm not talking to you. No, you can't search my house. And this continues to go on for a little bit until finally there's some kind of falling out that occurs, and divorce gets filed by his wife, Julie. And she ends up calling her attorney and
I can
says,
see that information leading to a divorce.
right? Yeah, you're coming home, blood-soaked every night, smelling like dead men? No.
We're going to kill people anymore.
Right.
I'm leaving you. I've heard. I'll stop. I can stop anytime. Yeah, I've heard that before.
So she, scorned divorce, in progress. She's scorned. She calls her attorney and says, there was this time the police came to me and said my husband was a serial killer, and I just kind of blew him off. But I got to thinking about it. And a while before that happened, my son, Eric, came running up. He was like 7, 8 at the time. And he says, look what I found, Mommy. And it was a human skull. And and she says, so I showed it to her, but I'm
Lucky rabbit's foot. Only
right.
not at all.
Can I keep it?
So she says, I went to Herb and I said, Herb, look what Eric found in the backyard. It's a human skull. And he says, oh, no, my dad was a doctor, which he was. He was an anesthesiologist. He said, when he died, remember I had to go get his stuff out of the garage? Well, he had one of those anatomically correct skeletons, that they use for science class and stuff. And it was probably that, we have raccoons. We always have the raccoons getting in the attic and stuff. One of those raccoons, I bet, got in there and got the fake skull, dragged it into the backyard to the wood line behind our house. And she says, I bought it. Did she? I don't know. I think we could tell the difference between a real human skull and a cast one, but
You think?
we'll give her the benefit of the doubt. So she tells this to the attorney, and she says, why don't you go and tell the police that they now can come out here and look around if they want. Herb's away. He has my son. They're at the lake house. So this missing person detective from Indianapolis grabs up a sheriff's detective from Hamilton County. They're standing in the backyard. They have an indoor pool house that's famous in this case because Herb had freaking mannequins staged in there like they were having a party. It's weird. They were all dressed in like sailor outfits and stuff. Weird. So they're standing back there and they're kind of looking at all that like, well, that's weird. And they turn around and they're just looking over the yard and they're like, what is this? There's a bunch of gravel in this yard. So they walk out and they pick up a piece. They're like, no, that looks like a tooth and that looks like a piece of bone. I think these are human remains. Just scattered loosely in the backyard, pulverized, very small, but just scattered everywhere. So they run back to the lab, or they have an officer run it to the lab, and they get a rush on checking it out. Boom, these are human remains. So they get a search warrant and spend the next 14 days excavating this wood line behind his house and find the remains of 11 men who had been missing up to this point. And they were burnt. He would burn them back there. He'd burn the bodies. So he finds out while he is away still. Like, he doesn't come home during this. He finds out what's going on at some point and flees to Canada. This is all history knows up to this point. Is he shows up in some beach outside of Ontario in Canada at some big park, and he shoots himself in the head. But no gun is found. They don't find a gun. So that's the end of the case, right? There's nothing we can do, can't charge him. But we have these 13 strangulations that occurred prior to this. Let's just call those his as well. So now all 24 men get put on him, 24 victims on him. And then the case is just, everybody's done. Well, I got bored during COVID, and I'm looking at these cases, and I'm digging. I'm finding people to call. I'm calling Virgil Vandegrift, the PI. I'm calling detectives that worked the case way back in the day or had something to do with it. And Virgil turns me on to the guy who initially reported the plate number, Herb Baumeister's plate number, to him, which broke that case wide open. So
the guy who he had tried to strangle, or tried to kill, and then
the survivor. Well, I get to talking to him, and when I finally get a hold of him, I try, and it takes a lot of convincing. Virgil has to stand up for me and say, "No, Todd's a good dude. Just talk to him." And first thing out of his mouth when I said, by the way, you can look him up. His name's Tony Harris online, but that's not his real name. So I call him by his real name, and I'm like, "Hey, I just want to see if I could have a conversation totally off the record, and you can tell me to fuck off afterward if you want." And he goes, "Well, which story do you want me to tell you?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, do you want me to tell you the same story I told the police and the FBI back in 1996? Or do you want me to tell you the truth?" And I was like,
"What the fuck?"
I'm like driving to Louisville to go see these guys, working on a podcast. So I pull a truck over, and I'm like, "Wait a minute, what's that mean? What's the truth?" And he lays out the most incredible story I've ever heard for like an hour and a half. And it's nothing. He says, first of all, he says, I was not a survivor. I was involved. And I won't give away to what level. I mean, the guy has not confessed to murders or anything to me, but he paints a way different picture and if he's lying, he has some really detailed information.
What the?
And one thing that he told me before he hung up, he said, "But Herb never would kill alone. He was being managed." And I was like, what do you mean being managed? And he goes, "Yeah, there was this college professor who basically controlled him like a puppet master. Everything he did, he had to run by this college professor." And I'm like, "Oh, holy shit." Like, this is a connection. I was looking for just a loose connection of Herb and Larry ran into each other at the same club one night, and they were like, "Hey, I'm a killer too. How are you? Let's go bowling or whatever." No, like a connection with the guy who pulled the strings for both of them. This guy's claiming they have in common.
Master.
I have found a couple other things that, yet circumstantial, but yet support that claim.
So now this is all going to be on your documentary.
Yeah.
When is this going to come out?
We're still like in pitch phase. So we have 3 production companies that are they're interested. Now, what's happened to us, I've never made a documentary, like a real documentary before, but every time you get somebody that's interested, there's like this buffer person in between, and they review your stuff, and then they're like, "We need to tweak your pitch deck and your sizzle reel a little bit." And so finally, after redoing things like 12 times, we sought out. We knew a guy who knew a guy basically. This guy, he's directing the new documentary, I think for HBO Max, about Serena and Venus Williams' father, the King Richard movie. But he's doing the documentary. So he takes a 2-hour consultation with us, goes over all our stuff, and he laid out a roadmap for our pitches that is like the best thing. Like, this changes everything. This is so much better. And now we're finalizing those. I think this week, by the end of this week, that sizzle reel's done, and then we can send directly to these 3 production companies.
Dude, that's awesome. My only request is that in the theatrical reenactment, that maybe Mike and I get to be on the gay task force.
Dude, we're all getting jobs. We're all on that surveillance team. First of all,
I want to
task force gay hunter.
we're all on there. You can be my buddy, Sammy Maldonado. You kind of favor him, actually, Eric. So
perfect.
We'll be other guys, Mike.
I just want to. I want to be. I want to be the mutilated victims. I just want to. I'll just be all of the victims. It'll just be my body. My face will never be present. It's just my body. It's the victims.
Yeah,
that'll be kind of a nouveau shot too. But he only show you from like the chin down.
I want my first film credit to be, Mike Edwards, and then ... mutilated victim number 2.
Victim number 1 through 19.
Yes. Wow, dude.
Gosh, dude, what a crazy story.
Crazy, bro.
Right here in sleepy little Indianapolis, Indiana, man.
That's because there's nothing else to do in Indiana.
Right? You just get
You
bored.
can either be a normal person or kill people. It's like two extremes over there.
There's really no in between here.
Jeez, that's crazy talk. That's awesome.
Now, I know that there was one. I don't know how much time you have, but you had sent us another possible thing to talk about tonight, which was a Michael Kenyon case.
Oh yeah.
The Enema Bandit. I have to at least get like a
this one's way quicker, but it's really cool. Like I had a cold case. My buddy was assigned a cold case. It was back in that era where you guys remember where they're like, oh, there's been so many developments this year on DNA. Go through all the old cases. If it looks like stuff you can send off for DNA, open the case up again. So that happened, and one of my buddies got this serial rapist had ripped through Shelby County, Indiana between 82 and 85, and there were 9 attacks. So he's going through it, and I was like, we worked together a lot, and I was like, hey, I remember that case. Like, my family knew a couple of the victims, so we get to talking about it. He's like, you want to help me? And I'm like, yeah. So we get it, and immediately, like, we just go through we talk to the old investigators, and we go through all the cases, and we just put together like an MO comparison, like what commonalities do they all have? And one, which not every victim of ours, but in about half of them they'd been administered enemas. Like 4 out of the 9 women were administered an enema, which I'm like, that's weird. I've never heard of that in all my days, in a sexual assault case. But you can tell.
Is that a sexual kink? Is that like something you would find on Pornhub? Like,
it's got a whole platform.
Really?
Turns out, yeah.
Damn, I never even heard of that.
Yeah, it's like it's fetish, right? Huh. So
you got to go deeper down the hole there.
Yeah. So
I have to subscribe for that.
Look up Waterworks, and I'll tell you why at the end of this story. It's called Waterworks. And it's good work in it, from what I understand.
I'm looking it up on my work computer.
No, don't do that.
I think it's dark web stuff, so you might crash the server. But
I'm not gonna do it then.
It's gonna be like that meme: FBI, open up, smashing into your place.
Dude, well, I caught my son. This is the sidetrack. I caught my son. They get that age, you catch them like you looking at porn on your computer, whatever. I'm like, oh yeah, whatever. So. I at the time I watched this video on how to make fake like Internet Explorer icons and stuff on your desktop, and when you click it, you could create your own pop-up message. So I got on there and I created one that said free porn. That was just real obvious. Put it right on the desktop.
Oh my gosh, that's entrapment.
Yeah, I know, right? And when you click it, it would pop up and it would say, Internet police alert! Like, you have committed a violation of internet law.
Shit his pants.
Yeah, the police are en route to, and it had my mom and dad's address. Because we were living there at the time because my life wasn't going well. But so he's in there alone, and I know, and I'm like, oh, I can't wait. I can see what happens. Next thing I know, you hear all this shuffling around. The door opens. He goes running in his room, and he shuts the door. And I go in there, and I'm like, what's going on? He's like, nothing. And I go, did something happen? You were just on the computer, and you act a little freaked out, like you're sweating a little bit. And he's like, no, nothing's wrong. And I said, you sure? I'll go in there and check the computer and make sure. And he's like, I don't know what happened. I just clicked the thing, and a bunch of stuff popped up, and now the police are coming. So, I let him off the hook.
So back when the internet was like still like in its infancy, like households only had like one fucking computer when I was growing up, and so that one computer was in the kitchen for us because it was like the family computer. Not everybody had a computer, and
plus you wanted to show it off to all your neighbors that couldn't afford a computer.
Yeah. Like, we're middle class.
Look at us.
And so I got on there one day, and I was in like, I don't know, 7th grade, maybe 8th grade, and I was looking up crotch rockets because I was really into sport bikes, and I really wanted one when I turned 16. So I typed in crotch rocket, and like all this crazy porn shit came up on the crotch rocket, and I couldn't, like, anything I clicked on was just more porn. Well, I was freaked out, and I had never seen porn before except for like a Playboy in my buddy's like playhouse or whatever, his little fort in the backyard. So I'm freaking out. I'm hitting like delete like on all this stuff. I was not looking at porn. Well, like a day.
You were a strangler. You were a survivor, weren't you?
I was a
Out in that
survivor.
treehouse.
I was a survivor. And I get home, and you remember the old screensavers that used to like bounce, where it'd be like, "Have a good day."
Oh, yeah,
and just like bounce. Well, this one said, "Eric, I know where you've been," and it just is like bouncing in the kitchen, and like everybody that's come
It was
over
like a
was
virus or
"What does that mean?"
something.
You know, that was when the screensavers. You had screensavers.
Yeah, I know.
And so my dad typed in as the screensaver, "Eric, I know where you've been."
Oh,
To like bounce around on the screen to like shame me publicly, and I was too embarrassed to like bring it up, but I knew he wouldn't believe me anyway. But I was like, I was looking at crotch rock, Dad. You know, but anyway, yeah, so it was there for like a month or so.
The worst thing that ever happened to me, I was in 4th grade, and I wanted to go to dicksportinggoods.com. and so I was like, oh yeah,
Another
I want to
strangle
look at,
survivor over there.
Yeah, I want to go look at dicksportinggoods.com. And so I typed in dicks.com on my little laptop, and I was like in the basement. And
You've been
I
gay
did
ever
not
since.
get the sporting part of Dick's Sporting
You've
Goods.
been
You stumbled into a sport, all right.
Yeah, and I was like, I remember 4th grade me seeing a fully erect penis. And
You've been murdering gay
very
people ever
scared.
since, haven't you?
You never been down to I-70 or what?
Yeah.
There was a hack, I guess, or a smart thing early on in the internet too, because the White House website is whitehouse.gov. Well, some porn group had whitehouse.com. So everybody going to look for, modern day information from the White House was sucked into a porn vortex that they couldn't get out.
I love it.
Which is probably, now that I think about it, Hunter Biden probably is the inventor of whitehouse.com. That was like his early years, you know?
Oh, you know he was.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I know I'm looking at fucking enema porn tonight. That's happening.
Do it. And when you do, look up Michael H. Kenyon, because when I put together that MO comparison, all the things that, all the cases had in common, there was some scripted stuff that he would say every time, but what really stuck out was the enemas, right? So I just took the whole MO comparison, made like a bulletin, sent it off. And in one of the cases, he mentioned that he went to school at Illinois State University. And I'm like, I don't even know if there's an Illinois State. I had to look it up. There was. Bloomington, Illinois. So I sent them this bulletin, and I asked them to go through all their old unsolved sexual assault cases, see if any of them lined up with this one. 15 minutes, I get a phone call from a captain there at the University Police Department, and he says, I know who did your cases. I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, Michael Kenyon. He's the Illinois Enema Bandit. And I'm like, what? Illinois what?
What a name.
He's like, yeah.
It's like the end of Home Alone, but worse.
Right. Yeah. He's like, he's famous. I go, Illinois Enema. Who gave him that name? And he said, Frank Zappa. Frank Zappa gave him that name. And I'm like, what? Frank Zappa?
Frank Zappa, the musician?
Yeah. He said Frank Zappa wrote a song about him. It's called The Legend of the Illinois Enema Bandit. This guy was big. And I'm like, what?
No.
So we find the song online. It was before Spotify or any of that, but we look it up. And believe me, that song got played all day long, every day in our little task force office. because it's incredible. So everybody at home can look up on Spotify The Legend of the Illinois Enema Bandit, and you can hear the whole song. They got Don Pardo to do the intro of it and stuff.
Dude, should we name
Crazy.
this episode The Legend of the Illinois
There you
Enema
go.
Bandit?
Name it that. That's your name.
Oh my gosh.
So Michael Kenyon, I'm like, okay. So they send me all their cases. I'm going through them, and I'm like, oh, these really line up. They really line up. I was like, but I'm an expert, so let me go to the FBI. We got 2 profilers assigned, like one to do it and one to do peer review. And they send back a pretty little report that I can use for a PC for a search warrant affidavit. And they said, you absolutely have the right person. There's no 2 like people like this on the planet. There's never been.
Whoa.
You have the right person. So I track him down in Illinois. I go there. I search his place. I bring him in, interview him for almost 6 hours. He won't confess. And then I swab his cheek, part of the search warrant. Skill compare. We had suspect DNA in one case, the very last case that was committed in our series. And I get back, and I'm like, I said, Michael, I'm going to tell you right now, I am going to be back either way. I think I'm going to be back here to put your ass in handcuffs and drag you back to Indiana. But if your DNA doesn't match, I'll come back here and I'll apologize right to your face. And he was like, deal. He did. Weird word, speech impediment. The whole interview, by the way, he was like, yeah, it sounds just like me, but it's not me. It's a copycat. I was famous, man. It was a copycat. And I'm like, ain't no fucking copycat. Shut up. So the whole interview. Well,
What
DNA.
should I copycat?
Right.
Does it involve giving enemas to my victims? Yes, I want that one.
That fucking voice haunts me to this day. It was a copycat. I was famous.
You just like scream it out at night.
Yeah. So DNA doesn't match. I'm like, God damn it. Case over.
Fuck.
I was now assigned to the drug unit. So they're like, hey, vacation over. Cold case vacation over. You got to come be a drug cop now. So I'm done with the case. And then just last year, 2021, now it was 18 years ago that I worked on the case. It was 22 years old before I ever touched it. So now 40 years old, they just had a trial because last year they got genealogy database DNA matched the guy that lived in a neighboring town, actually, who was in the case file as a person of interest, but had gone to prison for another rape. And when we looked at it, it just didn't line up. But he was the guy. And I decided to go testify in the trial 2 weeks ago. And they got guilty on all 18 counts.
Dude,
all 9 victims.
congratulations.
Yeah. I mean, I had the wrong guy. Let's not congratulate me too high. So now I got to go back and apologize to Michael Kenyon. And I'm thinking about making a podcast about it. Maybe a season of a podcast.
Man, listen. We don't want to abuse your time, but you sent us one more thing to talk about, which was Stephen Ray Hessler. Do you have time to
That's the
tell
guy.
us about Mr. Hessler? Oh, that's him.
He's the guy who lived in Greensburg, Indiana, whose DNA matched thanks to
Oh, got you. Now I'm following.
genealogy database. That's Michael Kenyon on your screen there when he was a young man. I got him much older. He was all gray haired, glasses.
Now they talk about he's the one that has the rape kit and he's the master sadist who carries the rape kit.
Yeah. So Stephen Ray Hessler is the reason you need to look up Waterworks, because when my buddies who worked the case with me back in the day called me to tell me that they had gotten a DNA match and they went and hit this guy with a search warrant to get more DNA and to search his place, they found, among other things, a frickin' black market dark web video called Waterworks of this enema fetish. And guess what the movie's about? It stars the Illinois Enema Bandit. It's all about the life story of Michael Kenyon. He was a freaking copycat. Michael Kenyon was correct the whole time.
God.
He knew Michael Kenyon's whole story. And I'm not saying he perfectly copied everything from him, but there were enough similarities. It was like he was incorporating part of what happened in the 70s with Michael Kenyon's case into his, in my opinion. And he had the whole biography on that fetish porn video called Waterworks.
Dude, that's crazy.
Nuts.
They say it's Stephen Ray Hessler. I was looking at when you sent me the link today. It's like Stephen Ray Hessler, master sadist. And I was thinking, like, how do you become a master sadist? Is that like what do you have your blue belt now, Mike?
In master sading?
No. Like what? You jujitsu or something?
Master
Like,
sading. He just made it a verb. How did you just make master sadist a verb? That's beautiful.
I don't know. It just happened. I'm not
it's
sure.
like master sommelier.
I'm
but like master
I'm a
sadist.
wordsmith. You know,
Like,
it's my
what are the
craft.
levels of sadist? Like I'm a certified sadist or a master sadist. Like wild.
Yeah.
That is wild shit. So listen, I don't like. I'm sure you don't ever listen to any other podcast because you don't have time.
I do every time
But
I can.
if you ever get a chance, our case breakdown that we did 2 weeks ago on the Dennis Perkins case, by far the most fucked up case I've ever read in my life. The affidavits, and we put on that episode, we put links to the PDF form of the affidavits and of the lie detector test and everything.
Nice,
dude. If you want to do it your own show, just steal all of our content. Do your own show on it, but absolutely the most fucking insane case. And the guy just went to jail for it in December of this year.
Wow.
And he gets sentenced in May, but he was a cop for 21 years. You should look that up. Dennis Perkins, the most fucked up case, 151 counts for him and his wife. She was a elementary school teacher of the most fucked up thing of rapes of children and adults for over 21 years while he was the commander of a SWAT team.
Jesus.
And she was an elementary school teacher.
I'll have to cover it on here. Now, like these, when we cover them, when Jessica reads through them, they're like 5-6 minutes long. So it's just a cursory overview.
Yeah.
Put the cool sound and all this stuff.
This is a great cursory. This is a great cursory because you can get so many. You could just literally list off the bestiality stuff. He jizzed into cupcake batter, and she gave the cupcakes to her students and took pictures.
I heard that. Okay, now that's the story you're talking about.
Yeah, but that's the only thing the media said. They didn't say that was. And you know what's crazy,
That was
Todd?
literally the icing on the cake. Literally, that was the
Stop.
Oh
my
Why did you
God.
say it like that? That's the most uncalled for thing.
I'm just saying.
You know, we're talking about
There was so much
killers,
more underneath.
and you just
The
had-
wordplay is strong in this one. He's like a
It
Jedi of wordplay.
He's a master sadist, so don't overestimate
Good.
it. But
Let the
the
words flow through you.
the cupcake part, which is what the media and what went viral, that was like the least crazy part of that whole story.
Yeah, sounds like it.
That's the least craziest part. And that
Wow.
nuts that the jerking off into cupcake batter is the least crazy. The whole 100 and other 50 counts are much more disturbing. It's unfathomable. And
That's
listen, I
insane.
know that you've seen some really crazy stuff and you've read some. I promise you have not seen anything like this. So if you get a chance, look into it, and I'd love to hear your take on it. And
I'll listen to that
your
episode,
show.
and then I'll start digging even more. That's
Yeah,
incredible.
I'll listen to yours. But man,
Well,
I
Todd,
appreciate
dude,
you
thank
coming
you
on.
so much. Yeah, man. We
guys.
love having you on the show. I feel like you're just the third host, man. Like you're on it. It's awesome, and I'm super stoked for the people. Obviously, moving to a new YouTube channel and pushing through views is one thing, but I'm so excited for all the listeners too, and they just missed out if they didn't get to hear it tonight, but they'll hear it tomorrow. I'm super excited for this one to get released, man. You're my hero, dude. Appreciate you for
You're my hero,
coming on. So,
dude. It's an honor. You guys ever need an extra third wheel? Boom, call me.
Yeah, hey,
yeah, we
Sarah
will.
Kelch. Sarah Kelch, she's in the chat. So I got to give a couple of people some shout outs before we leave. But Sarah Kelch, she is like obsessed with true crime. I know she will be subscribing to This Day in Crime. You can, and then also Ryan, who likes to make a lot of videos where he puts Mike and I's face, like on Titanic and stuff like that. I don't know Ryan personally. But he every so once in a while slides into our DMs with these epic videos, and he's been in the chat all night. So big shout out to Ryan, and also Doug Stillwell, who's always around. Imperial Girl, thanks. Thank you guys for all joining us tonight.
tell everybody where and when you want them to find you and what you're, what do you want to plug?
Well, listen, I got everything's on my website, toddcomedy.com. Anything podcast related, it's all just a directory for that. And then on social media, all across the board, I'm at Todd McComas, just like that right there. Boom.
All right, love it,
dude. Awesome. Stick around. Let's chat in the studio before you head off. But as far as the stream goes, as far as the show goes, it's a wrap on this night shift, baby.
Yeah, that night shift was a real pain in the ass.
I need an enema. I don't know about you guys. There's gonna be some waterworks in my household.
I am so horny right now.
I'm sitting in a puddle.
I'm gonna go kill like 6 gay dudes after this.
Well, what a good way to outro the show, baby.
We're going to need a good mattress. That's for sure.
Don't kill him on my ghost bed. Somebody else. All right. Goodbye.